Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is a religious leader. He's also considered by many to be amongst the world's wealthiest men. He also supports and manages one of the world's largest philanthropic organizations. I'm delighted to welcome His Highness the Aga Khan. Your Highness, you're a religious leader of the Ismaili community, an inspiration to millions of Muslims around the world. We have traditionally associated religious leaders with austerity and sort of denial, in a sense. You embody a fullness of life. What is the worldview that circumscribes your work as an imam?
There's a very important point to make here, which is that Islam doesn't make the division that you've just made between faith and world. We are required to live in both and to live properly in both. I think it's essentially the Christian world that has tended to make a division between leaders of the faith and worldly matters. In fact, I would go further and I would say even that today is tending to disappear, because it's clear that religious leaders have responsibilities that they fulfill, they have authority that they can use properly, they have institutional resources. So the point I would make is that in the fullness of my responsibility, it's the fullness of my life.
But sometimes do you find that, when you run businesses, for example, that there is a greater potential for conflict? We traditionally associate issues of business with not really being ethical, and not really sort of following moral framework and structures. So is that ever a conflict for you?
No, I did have a period in my life when I had some direct personal entrepreneurial activities. That's 20 years ago. I've given everything up. The Arkan Development Network has got the Arkan Fund for Economic Development, which invests in economic activities, but specifically in the developing world. And the only personal activity that I have is the bloodstock activity, which I inherited from my family, and that I have tried to maintain as best I could. But otherwise, I have practically no personal entrepreneurial activity whatsoever.
You're a direct descendant from the Prophet. Is that something that you feel sort of constantly conscious of? Is there a mystical dimension to it? Is there how does that sort of play out for you?
I think one of the specifics of Islam is that you live your faith, and you're not one day in your faith and the next day out of your faith. It's a permanent presence. It's a presence which brings you happiness, it brings you objectives in life, and therefore I don't think that one can make this sort of dichotomy. It's a permanency of thought, of attitude, of ethics. So that's really what it is.
But are there sort of, there are presumably rituals and practices that go with it. So are you in that sense a practicing Muslim, or is this more a philosophical framework?
It's both. It's both.
So how significant are the ritualistic, the practices that are involved?
Well, I think you have to be clear in both. But as I said, you live the faith. It's not that if you're in a meeting on a given issue that you forget that behind the decisions you are taking are the ethical principles of your faith. And they have to be there all the time, whatever you're doing.
There is obviously sort of diverse interpretations of the faith, and sort of the more sort of fundamentalist aspects of it. Don't take interest. Don't sort of in terms of loans, debts. Do you feel sort of compromised in, or let's say that to other practitioners of the faith from other traditions? Islamic tradition, feel that you have somewhat compromised that understanding of Islam?
Not at all. We have a number of agencies. The vast majority are not-for-profit agencies. And where they are for profit, it is because they have a development purpose, and it is very difficult, frankly, to carry out a development program if you don't renew your resources. So you have to renew your resources. The important point, I think, is to give everybody a choice. It is actually the individual in society who must make the choice. It is he or she that makes that choice. As long as the choice is available, I feel comfortable.
In what ways do you feel that you have helped or you have contributed to the reinterpretation or the revitalization of Islam to make it more contemporary?
I think there are issues in the Islamic world that have been difficult to deal with. One has been, for example, the physical environment and the expression of culture in architecture, in environmental work, in art, music, etc. But there are other areas also. Governance, good governance, principles of public consultation. Democracy, after all, is a form of government that is now becoming very, very prevalent. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily good government. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily government which is effective for the people that it is supposed to serve. So we are living at a time when there are a number of fragile democracies in our world, and not specifically in the Islamic world. But the bridge between the notion of a modern democracy and issues of public consultation, meritocracy, these are all issues which bridge Islamic ethics and modern governance. And that is a very important area which I've been working in. I've been working in also in interpretation, clearly. As you said, there are numerous interpretations in Islam. And there the key issue is the acceptance of pluralism. The Ismaili community itself is pluralist.
You're watching a conversation with His Highness the Aga Khan. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away.